Welcome to the HEAL podcast for all things related to Lyme disease and other chronic illnesses. I'm Mimi McLean, mom of 5, founder of Lyme 360, and a Lyme warrior. Tune in each week to hear from doctors, health practitioners, and experts to hear about their treatments, struggles, and triumphs to help you on your healing journey. I'm here to heal with you. Hi, welcome back to HEAL podcast. This is Mimi from Lyme 360. Thanks for coming on today. Today we have Moses Durazo, and he is an alternative medical practitioner. He is author of How Magnets Can Save Your Life. He's also a chronic illness warrior, and he is a Medical Biomagnetic Pair specialist. I met Moses a few years ago at his practice, Durazo Medical Biomagnetism and BEMER Therapy in Santa Ana, California. I invited Moses on today to describe biomagnetic therapy, BEMER therapy, and how he can help with chronic Lyme symptoms. Moses, thank you so much for coming on. I came to you a couple of years ago and I had read a little bit about biomagnetic therapy. And so I thought it would be really interesting for you to come on today to talk to our listeners. Most of the people do have chronic Lyme or some kind of autoimmune disease that is affecting their health. And I do feel like magnetic therapy is one of those therapies that's not really talked a lot about. And it was actually when I heard about it one time from somebody on the East Coast, I started looking into it. And there's actually not that many people that are practicing it. And so happened that one person that I found in California was actually not far from me, which was you, which was about an hour from me. And you're close to like Anaheim area. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to start out by talking about yourself a little bit. And I know that health and medical has always been an interest of yours and you wanted to become a doctor, but then you kind of steered into a different direction. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you're asking me this question and that we reconnected after so many years. Just recently, we started updating our website, and part of the questions that were asked of me, it's like, hey, could you just give us a summary of how did you get into medical biomagnetism? So I was just recently going through memory lane about it. And when I was at the university, I went to UC Santa Cruz. I remember getting so excited that I got a wart in my finger because that meant that I could go to the medical doctor on campus because I was just like, I need to be around the doctor, because I had completed a medical assisting program while I was in high school. So I was just looking for any excuse just to be back inside of a clinic and talk and just be inspired by the practice. I remember the doctor after telling him, oh, and I have this, and I'm also concerned about that. And then he looks at me and he says, well, what do you want me to do about it? I was 18 years old at the time. And I remember just saying, well, I don't know, you're the medical doctor. He didn't really like that. His head almost snapped off. I think he was in shock that a little 18-year-old kid would talk to him that way. But I remember walking away from that medical appointment and being disappointed that he couldn't help me. And it made me think, well, if the doctor can't help me for something as insignificant as a wart on my finger, well, how can a doctor even help anyone else, with serious things? And I went through a little crisis there, but as fate would have it, it was really interesting that on the shuttle, at the shuttle stop, going back to my dorm room, a fellow student at the university asked hey, so what's your major? And I said, well, I'm going to be doing pre-med. This is my freshman year. And the question was, oh, are you going to do the holistic health program here on campus?
They've had that.
Yeah, they had that. And I never heard of the word holistic ever in my life. I didn't know what she was talking about. She said, yeah, look, here's the catalog. And she handed it over to me. And when I got back to my dorm room, I was studying it and it just seemed fascinating. And that's how I ended up in the world of holistic health. But how I got into medical biomagnetism, it's all part of the journey. But I had graduated from the university with this belief that I had learned everything I needed to know so that I could be healthy the rest of my life. And if I ever got sick or anyone in my family ever got sick, that what I had learned was enough to help them through the process of healing. And I was so wrong because in my late 20s, I ended up developing chronic digestive issues. And everything, all the notes, I brought them all out and I started making tinctures and remedies and then buying supplements and then going to other healthcare practitioners. And I had just figured that what I had was a matter of just getting older. And it's a common belief that as you get older, that just things begin to fall apart. And so I thought, hey, I made it. I guess that's what late 20s is all about. I'm falling apart. So it was interesting because someone asked me, hey, Moses, since you're in the holistic health field, you like natural medicine. What do you think about magnets? And I remember telling that person, oh, they don't really work. And the reason why is because I had purchased some magnetic shoe inserts that I was wearing every single day for the last 3 years. She said, hey, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it's like a treatment. And if it kind of looks like acupuncture, if you will, but they're using magnets and you got to place them in your body. And so, I said, well, heck, why not? Let me give it a shot just out of curiosity. It was really more curiosity than the idea that I was going there to be healed of anything, really. Because I had also developed this belief of like, well, natural things are fine and all, but it doesn't create much of a shift. That's also another belief that I had adopted. And I was completely blown away with how literally one 25-minute treatment, one day later, when I woke up the next day, that 4.5-year problem completely disappeared.
That quickly? Wow.
Yeah, 24 hours later. And I was completely blown away with that. And that's why I ended up dedicating my life to this field. And I give thanks to the doctor. I feel really grateful for having had that experience of just being told honestly, hey, listen, I can't help you. That was a big deal. And I'm really grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you dive deeper into what biomagnetic therapy is and what it's doing? Like, how is that helping you heal?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So what it's called, my field specifically, it's called the Medical Biomagnetic Pair theory, biomagnetic pair. So what we're doing is we're using pairs of magnets, positive and a negative field, and we're applying them to the body in very specific pH distorted areas of your body. So the understanding is that when you're infected with microorganisms, virus, bacteria, fungus, parasites, when there are glandular or organ dysfunctions, when there is intoxication, when there is emotional stress, what's happening inside of your body is that very specific parts of your body are becoming pH distorted. So one part of your gut body will go towards acidity and another part alkaline. And this isn't to be thought of in terms of a litmus paper of, hey, let me see my saliva. Oh, my pH is whatever. That's not how we are looking at pH, but rather there's a doctor, Dr. Richard Broingmeyer was actually one of the scientists who first discovered that you can use magnets to the body and you place it there. And what happens is that your leg gets shorter. There's a reaction, it like pulls inwards. So let's say your feet are even and you place a magnet in a certain part of your body. And if it's pH distorted, your leg comes in. And that's the diagnostic part. So Dr. Goyce took that a step further. And Dr. Goyce is a medical doctor. But he thought, wait a minute, if you can detect, can you correct? And that was the birth of. So the understanding, like I was saying, is that, like, let's just say COVID. We're going to use that as an example. The understanding is that it's creating a pH distortion in the urethra. That's what we would call the biomagnetic pair, that the area, the cells of the urethra on the body become pH distorted. So in order to neutralize that pH of those cells, you're adding a positive and negative field there in that area. And then depending on our latitude on Earth, it would determine the amount of time. So here on our latitude, where I am in Orange County, California, I leave the magnets on for 27 minutes. And then what that does is it neutralizes your biochemistry, and then it renders those microorganisms, they die. For example, that's why I healed so fast. My issue was pinworms. I had pinworms.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought it was the weirdest thing. I mean, they put magnets.
How did you find that out, though?
Because depending on where you place the magnets, depending on your pH distortion, that's how you know, that's how we diagnose what the problem is. So, for example, COVID will always distort the urethra. That's an example. Let me see. Another one is Candida, right? That's a common one that we see here at the office all the time. So that will always distort the diaphragm area. So if you wanted to diagnose someone that way, you get a magnet, you place it on the diaphragm, you check leg length. If the leg shortens, you can say, yes, that person has that problem.
Now, do you have that ability for Lyme?
Well, Lyme is the label they give the disease, right?
Right. That's like the whole, like there's cofactors, there's Borrelia, there's Bordella.
Exactly. So now if we're talking about Borrelia, yes, there is a way to test for Borrelia. Now, just so you know, and to give a little bit more in-depth explanation about medical biomagnetism and as it relates to diagnoses, if you have 100 people, let's just say 100 people diagnosed with Lyme's disease, I'm pretty sure that what's going to happen is that we're going to be placing magnets. Everyone is going to be unique. The question is, what is the pH distortions that have led to that diagnosis? It's not as simple as just getting rid of Borrelia. Sometimes there's other co-infections taking place, and also emotional issues that we've seen are also part of the equation.
I remember you talking to me about that when we were there. You did like a little, I don't want to say lecture, that's not the right word, but a little kind of presentation on the board about, I don't know if something came up or why, if you do that to everybody, but when I came, you did something on the board and you talked about like my past a little bit and emotionally dealing with stuff. I think my dad had just passed away when I came to you. And I think that came out or something. Anyway, yeah. So you do have an emotional component to it when people come visit you as well.
Yes. So Dr. Goy's, our teacher, the one who discovered or developed this understanding, he's a medical doctor. So he's very medically oriented, and in spite of this being a natural healthcare field, the approach is still very medical. It's just we're using magnets. And, when I studied with him back in 2008, I said, you know what, I'm just going to disconnect from the holistic way of thinking, and I'm going to adopt the way he's teaching us to do it. And I did that for a good 2 solid years. But a person's well-being is not just a matter of applying science and technology. It really has to be a holistic approach. How we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our place in the world, how we feel about others in the world. All of those things are very important in a healing process. So, yeah, for the most part, I do like to talk to people about the emotional component because, who doesn't face challenges? I've learned a few simple shortcuts through life, and I like to share those shortcuts. And that's why I do talk a lot about the emotional component with people.
Do you mind sharing like 1 or 2 of those shortcuts?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I find is that we're really good at hiding things or pretending that yesterday's issues are no longer bother us. We're really good at that. And that's what we call armoring. We just protect ourselves. And of course, today's going to bring its own set of challenges. And so then we get busy just thinking about today. We get busy thinking about tomorrow. And so one of the things, and I wrote this in here, I have the very first book that I published, this one, How Magnets Can Save Your Life. I thought that this exercise that someone once gave me was very important. And what happened was that, it doesn't matter if you're in the healthcare world and we help people every single day, but when one is in trouble, we still should be seeking help from other people. And I remember this was about 5 years ago. My life was going through a little storm. No, not a little storm, a big storm. It was so important that I felt like I needed to talk to someone. And, it was interesting because this man, he's an energy worker, and he said, hey, listen, your problem, it has no solution, really. I can't really help you, but I'm going to ask you to do something and promise me you're going to do it. And I didn't feel comfortable promising him anything, but I said, okay, well, I asked for help. I may as well follow through on whatever his advice is going to be. He gave me the most simple, but the most powerful advice I had received in a very long time. And I thought it was so powerful that I share it with everyone. The exercise is this, that you go out into a place in nature. So you go to the beach, you go to the desert, you go to a meadow, you go to a hill, you go to a lake, you go find a creek, wherever. But it has to be a natural place. It can't be your bedroom, not in your car, not in your backyard. I've tried it and it doesn't work. It's not the same. So I went over down to the beach because it's really close to us here. And so the exercise, it's a purging exercise, an emotional purge. And what we do, males and females do it slightly different. See, so males pretend that we are speaking to our mothers, and females, you pretend that you're speaking to your fathers. There's something very special about that mindset. So I discovered a lot. I discovered as I was going through this, first of all, and I've talked to other people who've done it. It's a little bit of a challenge, especially when you don't have that type of relationship with the parent of the opposite sex. And I think that's why it's such a powerful exercise, because I think most of our issues do stem from the relationship with the parent of the opposite sex. So it took me a while even just to begin to say something. I was at the beach for like 20 minutes and I just couldn't bring myself to do that. But the moment I did that, it's really interesting because it flashed me back to adolescence and before to childhood. And then I realized, when it was all said and done, it took me about an hour of just things started popping up. And then by the end of that hour, I just felt amazing. And so I've shared this with people over since then. I've pretty much said, hey, by the way, you should try this. And I want to say that 99.9% of anyone who's ever done that exercise will come back and say, my God, I had no idea just how much emotional baggage I've been carrying all my life. And then what we discover, because I discovered it, but other people come to the same conclusion. I don't tell them what the outcome is going to be, but they also tell me the same thing. I realized that the problem is not the current problem. The problem stems from something in the past that we never resolved. When you don't resolve that thing, you're living it every day, whether you're aware of it or not. It's just an active conflict that's never been resolved. So that's, I would say, like the main shortcut.
And you have to say it out loud, right? You can't write it. You have to say it out loud.
You have to spit it out. You have to spit it out. And so I wanted to say it's like shining light on it. When you shine light on it.
And is it usually like one or two situations, or is it a bigger issue? Like what would you say typically? Like an ongoing challenge? It could be just one time something happened, or it could be...
I mean, most people are really surprised with what comes out of their mouths. So people might go with the idea of like, hey, I'm having relationship problems, marital problems, problems with their children. I mean, these are the common things. So they'll go there and then all of a sudden things come up about childhood, about their parents, about discipline, about not feeling worthy, not being loved, not feeling good enough. These are all common experiences that we share. But yeah, I mean, whatever it's going to take to get you out there, I'd say just go. I mean, you'd be surprised you're carrying.
Yeah, no, it's emotional piece of this is huge. I keep going back to that. It's the days when I'm not, like I have kind of been in a funk lately and not feeling great. And I definitely think I just came from acupuncture, and it's definitely an emotional piece to it. I think just everything that's been going on, I think it's wearing on everybody, including myself right now, of just COVID and the elections and everything. So it's just a lot of stress, a lot of negative energy out there. And I think it wears on everyone's health. So I think everyone's in the same boat for the most part at this point. So just learning how to de-stress, like you're talking about. Now, your therapy, how often I know you can buy the magnets through you. How often do you suggest coming to you, or how often do you suggest putting it on your own body and doing it from home?
Yeah. So if you will, it's kind of like, so you have the medical approach where you come to me, and then there's the over-the-counter approach, your own self-care approach. And when I meet a person for the first time, I generally say, hey, let's see each other back to back, about a week between sessions. And depending on their situation, I might say, hey, listen, after the second one, I'll see you in 1 month. Of course, there are people who come from all over the place and they just can't be back. They're traveling, they're passing through, or they just wanted to have this one experience. And it's not easy to come back. But, I always think that a little bit of something is better than nothing at all of it. So what I ended up doing, and as a result of the pandemic, it also inspired me to create a service where, because you're right, we started this conversation talking about how inaccessible it is. There's just a tiny number of practitioners like myself in the world. So hardly anybody knows about it. That was my intention in developing simple biomagnetic kits that people could use at home. So what people started saying, well, hey, listen, I'm using them at home, but I want something more specific, more diagnostic. Can you help me? And the cool thing about what we do with bioenergetics or muscle testing for the layperson is that we're able to determine where you would place. I mean, you're in the East Coast, right? Is my understanding. So
right.
If you were to say, hey, Moses, I've got magnets, will you help diagnose me and will you tell me where I need to place the magnets for my current situation right here, right now, today? And that's what we've been doing for people. So
Oh, that's great. Like a Zoom, is it through Zoom too? Like a video?
I've not done Zoom yet. I'm open to it though, but it's more of an illustration that I label. So a little picture and I say, put the magnet here, here, here. It's all very simple. But, as we're going through this journey together, it's also, there's a lot that I juggle here, but I'd, be very open to the Zoom conversation as well. There's so much to actually teach. And, I'm glad that you actually invited me to this conversation because I've been thinking it'd be nice to have conversations with other people. And I think this is why you came around to remind me how important it is to connect, at least this way through Zoom. So thank you.
Yeah, it's true. And I think people don't really talk about it. I've been talking, each week I talk to different practitioners doing different things. And honestly, this doesn't come up very much. And the reason why you came up is the next area I want to bring out. I brought a BEMER mat. And one of my friends this summer, I went into her house and she had one. And I didn't know anybody else that had one except for you. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, wait, you have a BEMER mat? And she's like, is it BEMER or BEMER?
We call it BEMER.
Yeah. So I was like, you have a BEMER mat? And she's like, you know what it is? And I said, yes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I left mine in LA and I haven't gotten it. I'm so bummed. And then that's what made me think of you. And then I was like, wait, I got to circle back and have Moses on and talk about, his magnets and also the BEMER mat. So I would love for you to tell people about the BEMER mat and how that kind of works with your practice.
Absolutely. And one of the things, that I was reminded with this whole experience with how BEMER came into my life is, it doesn't matter how smart we think we are. If we're going to be successful in life as a whole, we need to be open-minded. And one of the big things that I learned, and it's important, we have to look at the fact that we don't know everything. So I used to celebrate, every single day, in practice of wow, I have really high success rate helping people, even people who have incurable issues that they've been doing medicine and supplements and all that stuff. But through biomagnetism, it's been able to improve their quality of life. And I always thought to myself, well, if people just knew about biomagnetism and they read my books and followed those tips and used magnets at home, that would be enough for them to be self-sufficient and take their wellness to a whole other level. And so what happened is that God or the universe threw a wrench into that belief system. And so my office got flooded and I had to make an emergency move. And as a result of this emergency room, you can't open up your doors until the city comes and does a walkthrough inspection and gives you the green,
Oh, no.
But it so happened that some man that I had met in somewhere, he's also in the holistic health world. He called me out of the blue and he said, hey, Moses, I'm going to this talk about this technology that's supposed to be really wonderful. And you want to come with? And I swear that if I had my office been opened, I never would have gone to that presentation. I never would, because I'm just like, why? I'm already doing something phenomenal. I don't need to throw something else into the equation. But it was a real blessing. I look back to that experience too about the flooding and I say, wow. So, and it's important. I think everybody also needs to look at all their challenges they're going through right now and say, what is the lesson? There's something great that's going to come from this. But here's the thing. This might be true for other people who've come across BEMER distributors. Depends, So the moment I got to this presentation, so they were getting people on the BEMER first. And the lady who got me on the BEMER was just yapping about how great and I should buy one. And I was like, I'm being sold something. And it just felt icky. I'm like, yeah. Just to learn and to have an experience, not to sit down and within 10 seconds.
Back off. Let me just experience it. Yeah.
Yeah, back off. But, once I understood the science, I was like, that's interesting. This might work. But of course, I didn't feel anything at the moment. I mean, it doesn't feel...
You don't even know if it's on. I finally had to buy a thing to be like, wait, is this thing even on? I'm so confused. Like you don't feel anything. You don't hear anything. You're like, yes.
Exactly. Right. It doesn't feel like anything. But it was the most beautiful sleep that I had ever had that night. I never in my life had ever experienced such beautiful, enjoyable sleep, like I was floating in the clouds. And when I woke up in the morning, I bounced out of bed. It was like, let's go conquer the world type thing, which I always usually wake up that way, but there was something extra special about that bounce that morning. And the second time I used it was 4 days later. And I remember being exhausted. It was like 9:30 p.m., exhausted. Like nobody talked to me. I can't, I got to go home.
Just for the 8 minutes? That's all you used for the 8 minutes? You felt exhausted?
No. So it was prior to hopping on it. So some people in the office for a talk that I gave, and they wanted to put people on the BEMER, all the people who came to my presentation. And so before I left, they're like, well, just hop on for 8 minutes and then, we'll talk tomorrow about you buying it, right? So again, I was so turned off by the whole, you got to buy one. But here's what ended up happening is that I laid on the mat, and within 2 minutes, the feeling of exhaustion just left my body. It was like zoop, out, and I felt completely energized. And I was so ecstatic with that feeling that I just jumped off the mat. I said, there it is. I now have the experience, the understanding of what it is. See, I don't need to be told what I need to buy. People need to have the experience and get the value out of it. And that's when I jumped off, and this made complete sense to me. And I immediately purchased it right there on the spot. And I have to say, that's got to be one of the, besides my education, I'd have to say that that's one of the best investments I've made in my life in terms of buying a gizmo. And I've purchased 3 ever since, and we then incorporated it here in the practice.
So do you use it every day?
I do try to use it every day in the morning before I get started. And I find, it's now been 3 years, but I find like it just keeps my energy levels up. Since I have them here in the office, I don't use them on Sundays. So I would say I'm using it about 6 days a week for only 8 minutes.
The 8 minutes. You don't do the nighttime one.
It's interesting because I've only used the nighttime one twice in the 3 years that I've ever used it. I mean, I just feel great all the time.
So for me, I think it's because my body's been in such bad shape. I haven't had the visceral reaction like you had, like the immediate, like, oh my God, I feel that much better. For me, what I believe in, I don't know if this is true or not, is the videos. Like if you go online and you watch the video of the vein pumping where they have that tight, I don't know how they have that video of the cells going through the vein. And before the BEMER, they're like slow and sluggish, which I know my blood is that way just from the Lyme. And then 8 minutes later, or they show you halfway through and then they show you after the 8 minutes, and just how much faster your blood is moving through your body by the BEMER is just amazing. So that's something for anybody to look at online, the BEMER technology. Can you talk about what's happening there? Like what does the BEMER do?
The BEMER, and so just so people know what BEMER even stands for, BEMER is an acronym for Bioelectromagnetic Energy Regulation. What the BEMER does is it emits electromagnetism. You have a unique patented wave that's different from any other pulse electromagnetic frequency technology. So if you will, they all fall under that umbrella. It just so happens that BEMER, as it's been presented in their literature and their studies, that BEMER is, let's just call it the Rolls Royce of these types of technologies. And so when that wave goes into your body, what it does is it stimulates blood flow at all levels. But, the most difficult, the most challenging part of blood flow issues are the microscopic vessels. And I think it's about 73% of our entire circulatory system is comprised of these tiny, tiny vessels where like the diameter of your hair is 10 times bigger than what the majority of our circulatory system is comprised of. So that's the beauty of this technology, is that it will enhance your blood flow, even though it doesn't really feel like much. I mean, Even if we ask ourselves right now, well, we know that our heart is flowing right now. What does that feel like? And it doesn't really feel like much. And so same thing too, once you're off of the 8 minutes or a 16-minute setting, whatever you choose, it's just enhancing that blood flow. So, in terms of when you're feeling off and you're using, you'll notice it later because, oh my God, I have more energy, or my quality of sleep was better, or you start going to the restroom a lot. There's just changes that happen as a result of frequent use.
Does anybody ever have a negative effect to it? One time I put my kids on it once and they were like, oh, I didn't feel well after that. Why would that have been? Was it in her head, or is there a chance of having kind of a negative effect to it?
It is a very real. It's a real thing. I've had people stand up and lose their balance, or they get dizzy, or they feel tired. Most definitely, it's real. And the reason is because there's a lot moving through your body. Waste, for example, see, your blood not only nourishes you and transports nutrients and oxygen and all these beautiful things throughout your body and feeding its cells, but all of our billions of cells also produce metabolic waste. And sometimes that stuff is just stuck. The moment it starts moving, people do feel funky. And so what happened to me was I was so excited about this BEMER technology. I ordered it, and within 2 days, it was already in my hands. And then I was so excited and I'd use it, and I started using it. And for, I want to say, an entire week of using it, my first week of using it, I felt terrible. I was like, oh my God. But I was celebrating at the same time. It's like, that's a great sign because it's moving. So, that's just part of the healing response.
Right. That's true. Now, for any of your patients that come to you and either do the BEMER or the biomagnetic pair therapy, is there anything else that you would recommend somebody who has Lyme or a chronic illness to do as well, besides those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. An email that was sent to me with someone from Lyme's, if I find it, I'll email it, forward it to you, because it's a very special testimonial I got from someone. And
Great, thank you.
Woman, I want to say maybe 4 years ago, she told me that she thinks about committing suicide every single day. And she's got the beach right there, and she wonders what it would be like to just go drown herself. And, what I ended up suggesting that she do, besides the biomagnetic pair treatment, what I do, that she also take the recalibration system. Here, I have the book right here. So I ended up developing a biomagnetic system for the layperson. It's a protocol that any human being on earth would submit themselves to. I think 80%, if you will, of this system is to do a mind, body, spirit evaluation. That probably looks backwards to you, right? So I show people how to, I'm going to call it a self-diagnosis, but in terms of mind, body, spirit, like, hey, what are your challenges in life? How do you feel about them emotionally, whether we're frustrated or mad or angry, resentment, and then what it's about. We can pick anything, relationship or childhood, any kind of trauma, and physically, how are you feeling? What are the symptoms that are manifesting them? How are they manifesting themselves? And then I ask people to then pretend that if life was perfect, let's just pretend you can snap your fingers and then everything magically changed. And now you're living the life you've always wanted to be. Now Mimi is living, she's now the woman she's always wanted to be. And Moses is now the man he's always wanted to be. And yay, we're living that. How would that even be? What does that even look like? What would your life have? And so I encourage people then on the other side of that list, on one side, you've got your challenges. And on the other side, we're going to fantasize. In a perfect world, I would be this way and I would be that way. And so then you apply. So you do this throughout 6 days where you apply magnets to very specific areas of your body with just that one thing in mind. So if we're going to focus with the emotional challenges, we'll do that one day. On day number 2, we're going to focus on the spiritual challenges. Day 3, all you're going to have your mindset is on where your body is hurting. And then on day 4, you're going to think about if you were living emotionally, what are the emotions you'd want to feel? Joy, peace, tranquility, excitement, euphoria, whatever that is. And then the opposite of what you want of your challenge, your spiritual challenge, if we called it low self-esteem, or we're angry about politicians. But in a perfect world, I'd be happy with politicians because they'd actually be helpful and constructive or whatever it is, So you're writing
them, they're not lying, whatever.
Yeah, all those things. And it's a phenomenal process. In any case, so going back to this lovely woman, she took the system. She was excited to learn and submit herself to the process. And I did bump into her sometime later. She ended up taking a course with a good friend of mine who's in the holistic health education field. And I bumped into her there. So she was taking his courses. And then she got up, because I went there to talk about what I do. And she got up and I was surprised to see her there. And she says, Moses cured me of Lyme's disease. And I was just like, what? And that's when she ended up telling me what had happened with her. But
it was the protocol. It was the protocol that you were just talking about.
Well, I want to say that it's both. What I've learned over the 12 years is medical biomagnetic pair science, or this modality, is very powerful. But you also have to have a solid foundation on which to stand on. Because if we go back to the same old patterns, the science might have helped, and you're fine. But if you don't change who you are, how you live, how you process this world, how you understand your place in the world, whether you're living with purpose, hey, next month, 2 months down the line, maybe the same thing comes back, or maybe something new happens. And so I want to say that it was both things that she did.
Mm-hmm, that's amazing. And how long did that take her? Did she say?
Well, I had bumped into her, I want to say like about 5 months after when I had first met her.
Yeah. And who was the other healthcare provider?
He's an educator. Arnaud Garan. Not sure if you've ever heard of him.
Okay. Heard his name, but I'm not that familiar with him.
Arnaud is we became really good friends over the years. And it was really interesting because when I first got started in medical biomagnetism, a lot of people started coming into the office and saying, Arnaud Garan sent us. And he just started sending a lot of people. And I was like, I've never met this individual. Who is he? Who does that? Because most people say, hey, I'm going to send someone to you. What's in it for me? That's how over the years, it's kind of been that way. I'll send people, but what's in it for me? And for the first time ever, it was such a unique experience where people just started showing up and they were like, oh yeah, this person sent us. And I was like, well, this is a very special angel. And then I finally reached out to him, and we were right there. We just understood each other, and we're all about empowering people. And you are too. I love your website and I love what you do. And
thank you.
These educational resources available to people. One more thing I want to add is that, I find that people are not very motivated to read, and everything's more about video or audiobooks. That seems to be easier than to pick up a book and read. And this pandemic, it's also been a blessing in terms of moving this mission forward, this biomagnetic mission forward, because I ended up recording the training, the recalibration training. And because you're so sweet and awesome, if you don't mind, I'll gift you access to the course.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a Zoom training, and people who have had this system will look at it, will go through the lessons, and then they say, oh my God, I knew I understood it, but now that I heard you explain it, it just clicks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
This has been amazing. And so if someone wants to find you or find your books or more about you, what's the best website for them to go visit you?
Yeah, people should go to savememagnets.com. So just the way it sounds, help save me, magnets.com. And I would say most definitely go there for all updates, just so you know, the current climate out there with alternative medicine practitioners, it's gotten a lot tougher. The FDA and the FTC have sent me notices because they don't like what I do. And so if people can no longer find our magnets easily, like on websites, third-party websites or Amazon, it's because of the FDA and their censorship around that. But I'm going to try my very best to, at least if you go through our website, we might be able to pull it off that way.
Thank you so much, Moses, for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's so interesting to me, and it's not talked about enough because it seems like it'd be very simple and not that expensive compared to what other options are for people. I definitely have people calling all the time saying, I don't have a lot of money, or I just found out, like, what do I do? And I think a lot of people's hands are tied because of the resources. Either they're not in the right location or they don't have the financial resources and things aren't covered by insurance to get better. So I like this option of trying to heal yourself, right? Or trying to build your immune system up and let your body do the work.
Absolutely. And just so you know, that's one of the great things that I personally love about biomagnetism is that magnets are forever. When I'm way gone, my great-grandchildren will still have my magnets and they will still work. So it's not one of those that you have to, there's no expiration date to magnets, and you can just, if you have the knowledge, and that's what I've been trying to do with online courses and the books that I've published, that so long as you have that knowledge, you can pick up some magnets and use them, and you get some very phenomenal results in your own self-care.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'll give you a call when I'm back in LA.
Absolutely.
Each week, I will bring you different voices from the wellness community so that they can share how they help their clients heal. You will come away with tips and strategies to help you get your life back. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm so happy you are here. Subscribe now and tune in next week. You can also join our community at Lyme 360 Warriors on Facebook, and let's heal together. Thank you.